The Deep Space Monitoring Station sat quiet in the early hours of the morning. Most of the staff had gone home, leaving only Dr. James Miller and his small night team to watch over the arrays of computers and scanning equipment. The coffee in his mug had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed as his eyes moved between 3 different screens, showing unusual signal patterns. "Mark, come take a look at this," he called to his assistant. The young technician walked over, his shoes making soft sounds on the polished floor. "These patterns, they're not random space noise." Mark leaned in closer, adjusting his glasses. "They're too regular, almost like someone sending a message." James finished. He typed quickly on his keyboard, running the signal through various detection programs. The computer beeped, confirming what he had suspected. These were artificial signals. Within an hour, similar reports started coming in from other monitoring stations around the world. The Global Space Defense Initiative's headquarters in Geneva began buzzing with activity despite the late hour. As head of GSDI, James knew he wouldn't be getting any sleep tonight. The first images came in from their long-range telescopes just before dawn. What they showed made James's heart skip a beat. A massive fleet of ships, unlike anything ever seen on Earth, was moving through the outer solar system. Their metallic hulls reflected the distant sunlight, making them look like stars moving in perfect formation. "How many?" asked Director Wilson, who had just arrived at the facility. James pulled up the latest scan data. "We're counting over 200 vessels of various sizes. The largest ones are—" He paused, double-checking the measurements. "Approximately 3 kilometers in length." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity was no longer alone, and their visitors had arrived in force. Emergency meetings were called in every major capital. The United Nations Security Council gathered for an unprecedented midnight session. Military forces worldwide went on high alert, though everyone knew their weapons might be useless against beings capable of interstellar travel. Back at GSDI headquarters, James and his team worked frantically to analyze every piece of data they could gather about the approaching fleet. The ship's design was elegant, but clearly built for function over form. Their engine signatures suggested technology far beyond current human capabilities, using some form of drive that barely registered on conventional sensors. Dr. Miller called one of his analysts. "We're picking up a transmission. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies." James rushed to the communication station. The message was clear and in perfect English, which was concerning in itself. It meant they had been studying Earth for some time. "People of Earth," the message began, "this is High Commander Reed of the Stellar Dominion. We represent a civilization spanning thousands of worlds across this galaxy. We have been observing your development and have determined that your world is ready for integration into our empire. Prepare to receive our diplomatic delegation within 48 hours." The message repeated in several other major Earth languages. James immediately sent the recording to the UN Security Council and various world leaders. He knew what would come next: panic, fear, and chaos if they didn't handle this carefully. But as he stood there, watching the fleet's steady approach on the main screen, a small smile crossed his face. He touched the small phone in his pocket, a special device connected to a very private network. He had one call to make, to a number few people knew existed. "This is Miller." He spoke into the device. "Implementation of Protocol Omega is now authorized. Activate the Sentinel program. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, in bunkers and bases unknown to the public, lights began to come on. Systems that had been waiting for decades hummed to life. The visitors approaching Earth thought they were dealing with a primitive civilization about to be easily absorbed into their empire. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The United Nations Assembly Hall was packed tighter than it had ever been. World leaders who normally sent representatives had come in person. Even countries that were usually enemies sat side by side. All attention focused on the stage where 3 tall figures stood. High Commander Reed of the Stellar Dominion looked almost human, except for his unusually pale skin and slightly larger eyes. His uniform shimmered with materials unknown to Earth's scientists, and a small device on his collar translated his words instantly. "Your world," he said, his voice echoing through the silent hall, "stands at a crossroads. The Stellar Dominion offers you protection, technology, and a place among the civilized worlds." He paused, letting his words sink in. "All we require is your acceptance of our authority." In the front row, Dr. James Miller watched carefully. Next to him, General Thomas Black kept his face neutral, though his fingers tapped quietly against his leg, a signal they had worked out beforehand. 3 taps. The scanners had detected no hidden weapons. Reed continued his speech, showing holographic images of worlds that had joined the Dominion. Beautiful cities reached into the clouds. Ships moved between planets as easily as cars on a highway. "This could be Earth in just 10 years, he promised. Then his tone changed slightly. The images shifted to show planets that had resisted. Most were now nothing but barren rocks. Of course, some worlds choose. Unwisely. We prefer to avoid such outcomes." A murmur ran through the assembly. Reed smiled, clearly believing he had made his point. "You have 1 month to make your decision. Choose wisely." After the delegation left, the real meeting began. Security teams swept the room for listening devices, and world leaders spoke freely. "They're lying," Miller announced to the assembly. "Our deep space scans show their empire is stretched thin. They need Earth more than they're letting on." The president of India stood up. "How can you be sure?" Miller nodded to his assistant, who projected new images on the screen. "Their ship's engine signatures show signs of stress. They've traveled far beyond their normal range to reach us. Plus, our quantum detection arrays picked up signs of recent battles. The Dominion is at war somewhere else in the galaxy. That doesn't change the fact that their technology is far beyond ours," China's premier argued. General Black finally spoke up. "Is it?" He pressed a button on his device. The room's lights flickered for a moment. When they came back on, a new hologram appeared, one showing Earth's hidden defenses. "Since 1947, he explained, "we've been preparing. Every major nation has contributed to Project Sentinel. We have weapons they haven't even imagined." The room erupted in controlled chaos. Many leaders had known pieces of the project, but seeing the full scope shocked them all. "Their scans can't detect our quantum shielding or the gravity manipulation fields," Miller added. "They think we're defenseless. That's our advantage." The UN Secretary General called for order. "What do you propose?" General Black stood straighter. "We show them just enough to make them nervous. Then we deliver our own message. Earth is not for sale, conquest, or colonization." "And if they attack?" someone asked. Miller smiled. "Then they learn why humans have survived every disaster nature has thrown at us. We're not just good at building weapons, we're good at surviving and winning." The meeting continued late into the night. By morning, Earth had its answer ready. They would give the Dominion exactly what they didn't expect, a warning of their own. As Miller left the UN building, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, the Dominion ships waited, their crews probably laughing at how easy this conquest would be. He checked his watch. In 24 hours, they would learn their first lesson about humans. Never underestimate a species that has spent its entire history preparing for threats, both from Earth and beyond. Colonel Anna Thompson stood at the entrance of what appeared to be an ordinary military base in Nevada. Beside her, High Commander Reed and 2 of his officers waited impatiently in the morning sun. Their elaborate uniforms seemed out of place against the dusty desert background. "This is what you wanted to show us?" Reed asked, not bothering to hide his disappointment. "Primitive aircraft and ground vehicles." Anna smiled politely. "We thought you might be interested in seeing our current level of military technology." She led them past rows of fighter jets and tanks, carefully selected to look impressive but outdated. Everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. James Miller sat in a control room that officially didn't exist. The underwater facility, hidden beneath 3 miles of water, housed some of humanity's most advanced weapons. On screens around him, similar bases across the world reported their status. "All quantum shield generators are online," reported his technical officer. "Gravity manipulation grid is at full power." Miller nodded, watching as green lights appeared on his global display. Decades of reverse engineering alien technology, combined with human innovation, had created defenses that their visitors couldn't even detect. Every crashed UFO, every piece of alien tech recovered since Roswell, had contributed to this moment. Back in Nevada, Anna was showing the aliens their missile silos. "Our most powerful weapons," she explained, knowing these rockets were just for show. The real weapons were hidden in plain sight, quantum-locked within the fabric of space-time itself. "Impressive for your level of development," one of Reed's officers said condescendingly, "but nothing compared to our orbital strike capabilities." Anna kept her expression neutral. "Perhaps. Would you like to see our radar facilities next?" As they walked, Reed's scanner beeped quietly. He frowned, adjusting it. For a moment, he thought he'd detected an energy signature unlike anything he'd seen before. But when he looked again, it was gone. In his underwater command center, Miller watched the aliens' every move through hidden sensors. "They almost caught that power spike," he told his team. "Adjust the quantum masking fields. We don't want them getting suspicious too soon." Technicians worked quickly, their fingers dancing across advanced control panels that looked more alien than human. Most of this technology had been developed in secret, shared between nations that were enemies on the surface but partners in humanity's defense. "Sir," called one of his operators, "we're detecting unusual activity in the Dominion fleet. They're moving more ships into attack position." Miller pressed a button on his console, connecting him to Colonel Thompson's hidden earpiece. "Anna, they're getting restless up there. Time to wrap up the tour." In Nevada, Anna smoothly began guiding her visitors back toward their shuttle. "I hope this tour has been informative," she said. "We wanted you to understand our current capabilities." Reed looked around one last time, his expression smug. "Oh, we understand perfectly. Your world's defenses are exactly what we expected. Primitive and inadequate." "That's one interpretation," Anna replied carefully. She watched their shuttle take off, carrying the aliens back to their fleet. Only then did she allow herself a small smile. In the underwater base, Miller brought up a secure communication channel to General Black at the UN. "They took the bait. They think we're defenseless." "Good," the general replied. "Begin powering up the grid. It's time to show them what humanity is really capable of." Around the world, hidden facilities hummed with power. Quantum generators spun up to full capacity. Gravity manipulation fields stretched invisibly across continents. Everything humanity had built in secret was ready. Miller looked at his watch. In less than 24 hours, the stellar dominion would learn that appearances could be deceiving. Earth wasn't just ready for them. It was ready to give them a demonstration they would never forget. The United Nations Assembly Hall looked different today. The normal rows of desks had been cleared away, replaced by a single podium surrounded by advanced broadcasting equipment. Hundreds of cameras pointed at the stage, ready to send humanity's message not just across Earth, but to the waiting Dominion fleet. General Thomas Black stood backstage, reviewing his notes one last time. Dr. Miller approached him, holding a small quantum tablet. "The broadcast link is ready," Miller said. "Every screen on Earth will show this, and the Dominion fleet can't block the signal." He paused. "Are you sure about this?" Black nodded. "They need to understand exactly what they're dealing with. No more hiding." The UN Secretary General stepped up to the podium first. Her voice was clear and strong as she addressed not just humanity, but the first alien civilization Earth had publicly contacted. "Today, we deliver our answer to the Stellar Dominion's demand," she announced. Then she stepped aside, making way for General Black. Black walked to the podium, his military uniform decorated with medals from multiple nations. In this moment, he represented not any single country, but all of humanity. High Commander Reed, he began, looking directly into the cameras. You came to Earth offering us a choice between submission and destruction. Today, we offer you a different choice. The main screen behind him lit up, showing footage that made the audience gasp. A hidden facility deep under the Antarctic ice opened its massive doors. In the Amazon rainforest, what looked like an ordinary mountain split apart, revealing complex machinery beneath. Similar scenes played out across the globe. For over 70 years, Black continued, humanity has been preparing. We recovered your crashed ships. We studied your technology. And then we improved it. The screen showed a demonstration that had been recorded the previous night. A small device, no bigger than a car, created a quantum field that froze time itself within a small area. Another device manipulated gravity as easily as turning a dial. These are not special effects or tricks, Black said firmly. This is what humanity can do. We've hidden our true capabilities because we knew this day would come. We knew someone would look at Earth and see an easy target. In orbit, High Commander Reed watched the broadcast with growing concern. His science officers were detecting energy signatures that should have been impossible for Earth's level of technology. Back at the UN, Black's voice grew stronger. We do not want war. We would prefer to be friends, trading partners, allies even. But we will not be slaves, and we will not be conquered. The screen behind him showed one final demonstration. A small island, uninhabited and far from any shipping lanes, simply vanished. Not destroyed, but removed from space-time itself. That island still exists, Black explained. We can bring it back whenever we choose. This is just one of many technologies we've developed. There are others we hope we never have to use. He leaned forward slightly, his voice firm but not threatening. This is humanity's warning to the stellar dominion. Earth is not defenseless. We are not primitive. And if you choose violence, you will learn that humans have spent their entire history preparing for battles against superior forces. The room was absolutely silent as he delivered his final words. You have 24 hours to withdraw your fleet from our solar system. After that, we will consider any military vessels beyond the orbit of Pluto to be hostile. Choose wisely. As Black stepped away from the podium, Miller checked his readings. The quantum energy signature of the Dominion fleet had changed. Ships were powering up weapons. They're going to test us, Miller said quietly. Black nodded. Good. It's time they learned that humanity's warnings should be taken seriously. In orbit, High Commander Reed gave his first order. 3 destroyer-class ships broke formation, heading toward Earth's moon. They were about to discover exactly how costly underestimating humanity could be. High Commander Reed stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as 3 destroyer-class vessels moved toward Earth's moon. His officers worked at their stations, confident in their superior technology. After all, they had conquered hundreds of worlds. Earth would be no different. Target the dark side of their moon, Reed ordered. Show them what real power looks like. In the underwater command center, Dr. Miller watched the approaching ships on his quantum displays. Colonel Thompson and General Black had joined him, their faces illuminated by the soft blue light of the monitors. They're taking the bait, Miller said, his fingers moving across the control panel. All 3 ships are following the exact path we predicted. Thompson looked at the tactical display. Should we stop them before they reach the moon? No, Black replied firmly. Let them fire. Let them see exactly what they're dealing with. The Dominion destroyers moved into position, their weapons charging. Energy readings spiked as they prepared to demonstrate their power. Reed smiled as he gave the order. Fire. 3 beams of incredible energy shot toward the moon's surface. But they never arrived. Halfway between the ships and the moon, the beams hit something invisible. The energy scattered in a beautiful display of light, like fireworks in space. The ship's sensors showed nothing there, but their weapons had clearly hit a barrier. Impossible, Reed whispered. Then his ship's alarms began to sound. In the underwater base, Miller nodded to his team. Activate the quantum stasis field. Around the three Dominion ships, space itself seemed to thicken. Their engines flared as they tried to move, but it was like trying to fly through solid steel. Within seconds, all three vessels hung motionless in space. "What's happening?" Reed demanded, watching as his best ships became trapped in the invisible field. None of his sensors could explain what was holding them in place. A transmission cut through their confusion. On the main screen, Dr. Miller appeared, sitting calmly at his control station. "Hi, Commander Reed," he said politely. "Your ships are now held in a quantum stasis field. They can't move, fire weapons, or send signals to your fleet. Their life support systems still work, of course. We're not monsters." Reed's face turned pale with anger. "Release our ships immediately." "I'm afraid we can't do that yet," Miller replied. "First, we need to be sure you understand your situation. Those ships aren't just trapped, they're frozen in time. For their crews, no time is passing at all. We could leave them there for 100 years, and they wouldn't age a day." The implications hit Reed like a physical blow. If Earth could trap 3 ships so easily, what else could they do? "The field extends in a sphere around each ship," Miller continued. "If you try to rescue them, any ships that enter that space will also become trapped. I suggest you consider your next moves very carefully." In the underwater base, Thompson watched the main fleet's reactions on the tactical display. "They're pulling back," she reported. "All ships are moving away from the moon." Black nodded with satisfaction. Now they know we weren't bluffing. "The question is, will they be smart enough to talk, or will they try something else stupid?" Miller kept his eyes on the readings. The Dominion fleet was in chaos, their neat formation breaking apart as ships tried to maintain safe distance from the stasis fields. Everything they thought they knew about Earth had just been proven wrong. "They'll talk," Miller said confidently. "Reed isn't a fool. He's just used to being the strongest one in the room. Now he knows that's not true anymore." The trapped ships hung silently in space, a permanent reminder that humanity's warning had been serious. The next move belonged to the Stellar Dominion, but for the first time in their history of conquest, they found themselves unsure of what to do. The neutral space station hung between Earth and the Moon, specially constructed for this historic meeting. Through its wide windows, the 3 frozen Dominion ships were clearly visible, still trapped in their quantum stasis fields like insects in amber. Dr. Miller and General Black sat on one side of the conference table, while High Commander Reed and his senior advisors sat on the other. The difference in their attitudes was obvious. The humans were relaxed and confident, while the Dominion officers kept glancing nervously at the trapped ships visible through the window. "Let's be clear," Miller began, placing a small device on the table. It projected a hologram of the galaxy, with the Dominion's territory highlighted. "We know your empire is at war on its outer borders. We know you're looking for new resources and technologies to help you fight." Reed's expression tightened. "How did you?" "We've been watching you for decades," Black interrupted. "The same way you watched us. The difference is we saw everything you tried to hide." Miller touched the device, and a hologram zoomed in on Earth. "We're offering you a choice. Not the choice you gave us. Submission or destruction, but a real choice. Partnership or isolation." One of Reed's advisors leaned forward. "Partnership. After you humiliated our fleet. After we defended ourselves from an unprovoked attack." Thompson corrected from her position by the door. "There's a difference." Miller continued. "We're willing to share some of our advances in quantum mechanics and gravity manipulation. In exchange, we want 2 things: recognition of Earth as a sovereign, independent world, and access to your faster-than-light travel technology." The hologram changed, showing technical specifications that made Reed's eyes widen. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Some of these advances, they're beyond even our theoretical understanding. Humans are very good at thinking outside normal boundaries," Black explained. "We had to be. Our world tried to kill us so many times that we learned to turn every problem into an opportunity. Miller pulled out a document, an actual paper document, which seemed to surprise the aliens. We're calling it the Earth Dominion Concordat. Full diplomatic recognition, mutual defense agreements, and technology exchange protocols. All we need is your signature. Reed looked at the document, then at his trapped ships. And if we refuse, then we go our separate ways, Black said simply. Your ships remain as a monument, their crews frozen in time. Earth seals its borders with quantum barriers, and you lose any chance of gaining our technological advances. He paused. And of course, every other civilization in the galaxy learns how a primitive world stopped the mighty Dominion fleet. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the station's systems. Reed picked up the document, reading it carefully. His advisors whispered urgently in his ear, but he seemed to have already made his decision. Your terms are acceptable, he said finally, but I want proof that the crews are unharmed. Miller nodded and pressed a button on his device. One of the trapped ships began to glow softly. We're releasing the smallest destroyer. Its crew will confirm that no time has passed for them. They'll also confirm that our technology is very, very real. Through the window, they watched as the ship slowly came back to life, its lights blinking on as it emerged from the stasis field. Immediate communications from the confused but unharmed crew filled the command channels. Reed picked up the pen, another deliberately old-fashioned touch, and signed the Concordat. As he did, Miller sent the signal to release the other ships. Welcome to a new era, Miller said, extending his hand in the human gesture of peace. After a moment's hesitation, Reed took it. The meeting had lasted less than an hour, but it had changed the future of two civilizations forever. As Miller looked out at the now empty space where the trapped ships had been, he allowed himself a small smile. Sometimes the best victories came not from fighting battles, but from making sure your opponent knew that fighting wasn't their best option. 6 months after the signing of the Earth Dominion Concordat, the sky above New Mexico lit up with a brilliant flash. A sleek ship, combining both human and Dominion technology, broke through the clouds and accelerated toward the stars. It was humanity's first faster-than-light vessel, the culmination of the new partnership between Earth and the stellar Dominion. Dr. Miller watched from the control tower, his eyes following the ship until it vanished from sight. Beside him, High Commander Reed observed with a mix of admiration and lingering disbelief. Your people modified our FTL drive design, Reed said, shaking his head. 6 months, and you've already improved technology we've used for centuries. Miller smiled. That's what humans do. We take ideas and push them further. He turned to face the alien commander. How are things going with the quantum shields we provided? Our border worlds are safer than they've ever been, Reed admitted. The rebels didn't expect our defenses to change so dramatically. The war might actually end soon. The control room buzzed with activity as both human and Dominion technicians worked side by side. On screens around them, similar scenes played out at facilities around the world. The partnership was working better than anyone had expected. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Reed said, his voice quieter. That day when we first arrived, when we thought Earth was helpless, did you ever consider using your weapons to destroy our fleet completely? Miller led Reed to a quieter corner of the room. We could have, he acknowledged, but that's not who we want to be. Humans learned long ago that the strongest position isn't the one where you destroy your enemies. It's the one where you turn them into friends. Through the window, they could see the massive shipyard where more vessels were under construction. Teams of human and Dominion engineers worked together, combining the best of both civilizations' technologies. The old guard in the Dominion Council still can't believe how this turned out, Reed said with a small laugh. They expected us to come back with either Earth's submission or news of its destruction. Instead, we've gained allies who are helping us solve problems we've struggled with for generations. A young lieutenant approached them with a report. The test ship had successfully made its first FTL jump, reaching Alpha Centauri in record time. The hybrid drive system had performed even better than expected. Miller read the report with satisfaction. You know what this means. Humanity is ready to join the galactic community properly, not as subjects, but as equals. More than equals in some ways, Reed admitted. Your quantum technology is already revolutionizing our society, and these are just the advances you've chosen to share. Miller nodded, remembering the even more impressive technologies that remained safely hidden in Earth's secret facilities. Some things were best kept in reserve. Humanity had learned that lesson well. At that moment, Colonel Thompson entered the control room with more news. The UN just approved the expansion of the partnership program. We're opening 5 more joint research facilities. And the Dominion Council has approved your request for cultural exchange programs, Reed added. It seems everyone is eager to learn from each other now. As they watched the sun set through the control room windows, Miller reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, Earth had faced the threat of conquest. Now, humans were reaching for the stars, helping to reshape a galactic empire, and proving that intelligence and innovation could overcome any technological gap. You know what the best part is? Miller said, turning to Reed. This is just the beginning. Wait until you see what humanity does next. Reed smiled, having learned that when humans made such promises, it was wise to pay attention. In just half a year, they had already changed the Dominion more than centuries of tradition ever had. The age of human innovation was beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same.